So it being 7 p.m. on January 14th, 2020, I will call this meeting to order. Happy New Year to everybody. And we will begin, as we always do, with public input on any topic not on the agenda. Anybody have anything? Come on, a crowd this big, nobody's got anything. Everybody's just perfectly happy. All right, that's fine. Good.
I had a ton of Joe's laundry to do.
You know, nobody wants that job.
No,
So.
that's a topic.
Chairman's comments, I don't have anything other than Happy New Year. Do you want to say anything?
No, the Women's Club had a great breakfast with Santa on Saturday, December 14th. Our former Selectwoman Ingeborg Hegman-Clark was there and participating. They raised a lot of money. And I told Ingeborg that she was now, after Dallin Hawk's resignation, subject to recall under the bylaws. And she didn't seem too enthusiastic, but the bylaws are the bylaws.
Thank you for that. Anything else? And I will say, this is our first meeting without Mr. Hawks. We'll try to soldier on. And I will also say that I bet anything that he'll be in Florida watching this on YouTube. And Don, if you are watching, that is just sad. We miss you, but turn it off. Go outside. Okay.
Almost as sad as being a selectman and stuff.
And we will get to the minutes of December 10th, 2019, which we all have in our packets. I made a couple of small edits that Maureen was good enough to put into redline for you. I actually lost my copy. I think it got swept up in correspondence. Thank you, Mr. Ryan.
No, I think.
Oh, thank you. That's it. I got it. So, any further amendments? Comments? Mr. Ryan?
The only thing I thought about, and I saw you put in after discussion under the poll hearing, but I assumed that we had to close the hearing. And I'm pretty sure we closed the hearing.
I know we did.
So it probably should say that we closed the hearing, then had a discussion.
Let's just refer, under the poll hearing, let's refer to that we closed the hearing before the vote.
I don't think it was in the tape, but I can recheck.
If it's not in the tape, then we don't put it in.
Okay.
But I kind of remember doing it
I
because...
looked for it because I thought it was
Really?
there, but yeah.
Because I always have this moment of, do we vote on that or do I just declare it closed? And I kind of remember.
Yeah.
If it wasn't...
Okay.
If it wasn't...
It's still open.
Sure. Yeah.
Then it's still open.
That's the
we'll
big-
take we'll take comments.
Can't blame me.
So if it's there, Maureen, add it, and if it's
Sure.
not,
Sure.
anything else?
Nope.
Or I hope my edits are self-explanatory. Pretty small stuff. Okay, do I have a motion?
You do. I move to accept the meetings of December 10th, 2019 as amended.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept the minutes of December 10th, 2019 as amended. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that is unanimous. Thank you. And now we have Chief Landry with us. And we are going to talk about the appointment of a new call fire lieutenant. Is this Mr. Dudley? Come on up, say hello.
How are you? How's he treating you?
He's all right.
He is.
How do you do?
Catching colds.
Chief, I guess we'll start off with you, and then Paul, I guess I'll just ask you to say something. And
We're here respectfully requesting the appointment of Paul Dudley Jr. as a call lieutenant to the Stowe Fire Department. Paul has been a long-standing member of the fire department. It's somewhat a family tradition. His dad in the back of the room was a call member when I was originally a call member of the fire department, also back in the mid to early 80s. Paul has been very active with training. He works a number of the per diem shifts, both daytime and nighttime. Whenever we're looking for somebody, Paul is usually a quick response for us. He's active on call responses. When he's a call member, he's coming back a lot. He's just recently taken over the mechanics. He's a certified mechanic, so he's been working with our existing mechanic, trying to keep keep our fleet moving well, so we stepped up on that. And per our department policies and procedures, we went through our typical promotional process, which requires the written 90-day study, written exam, complete a 70 or higher on the exam. You get to move on to an oral board, which is 2 department members, and you bring in an outside chief. And Paul scored well in that and brought us to this point. And he's accepted the challenge as the call fire lieutenant for Stowe.
Paul, why don't you tell us who you got here from your crew?
Oh, I got Lieutenant Benoit, Jeremy Fioravanti, and I think myself there somewhere.
And how about family members?
Oh, my father, my mother, and my girlfriend.
Wonderful. Welcome, everybody, and Paul, welcome aboard in this new capacity. Questions from the Board of Selectmen?
Well, looks like he's all ready to go, you know, and just
Yeah.
keeping the town safe.
I tried.
Thank you for stepping up for this. I know that one of Chief Landry's goals when he took the job several years ago was to beef up and to recognize the efforts of our call staff. And he's done a great job in that, and all of you guys have done a terrific job.
Thank you.
And we very, very much appreciate it. And any questions from any members of the public, members of the family? This is your chance. Ask some questions in public, nothing like that.
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Seeing and hearing none, I will take a motion.
Mr. Chairman, on the recommendation of Fire Chief Joe Landry, I move to appoint Paul Dudley as the call lieutenant for Stowe Fire Department, effective immediately for the remainder of a 1-year term expiring June 30th, 2020, and subject to reappointment at that time.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to appoint Paul Dudley as call lieutenant for the fire department, effective immediately for a 1-year term expiring June 3rd, 2020, and subject to reappointment at that time. Further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, let's signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that is unanimous. Paul, thank you very much. And now we want a little ceremony?
I do have a badge. One thing I did want to mention that I neglected to say was Paul is actually filling a position vacated by Nick Trioli.
Yes.
He served us for just a little over a year, but he was appointed as a full-time firefighter, EMT, paramedic actually, because he achieved his paramedic in Mashpee. He lives down the Cape. He had already moved to the Cape, and he was commuting to work his volunteer call lieutenant shifts once every 5 days. He was coming up and staying in the station until he had found some permanent employment down that way. So I'd like to just make note that he served us well for his time. He was an active call and per diem firefighter before that.
We'll note our appreciation for Nick, and it sounds like it was a good move for him.
And I want to stick Paul to that.
Okay. No. Does Ann, you want a picture or anything?
No, I'm all
Okay.
in front of the camera.
Well,
Sorry.
hold it. Members of,
Yeah.
sir, you want to step forward? Yeah.
No blood at all. I'm
He
impressed.
picked a good uniform. And all right. Congratulations.
Thank you, boss.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. And now, we also have an appointment to the cemetery. Now, it says committee. I thought it was commission? I thought it was technically commission. You don't care?
Actually, it's
Oh.
not technically either,
Okay.
but what is my ad shadow?
I'll say, well, what is it?
The statute calls it commission, so that's fine. The
Okay.
charter has
I'll call it the cemetery commission.
commission.
Okay. We have an appointment to the cemetery commission, Chet Jacobs. You want to join us?
You don't have to stand up.
Now, we,
You don't have to.
I support you.
Good to see you.
Okay, good to see you. Thanks
Good
for
to
coming.
see you.
Good to see you, Chet.
Good to meet you. Sir, have a good one. Thank you very much. Huh?
Do you want to have a seat and just tell us something about your interest in serving on the commission?
Sure. So I've been in town a very long time.
Yes, you have.
And I work for the Council on Aging, as you probably all know, driving the van as an on-call driver, and worked out pretty well. And I was walking through the parking lot at the community center the other day, and GH was driving the truck with the snowplow on it behind me, and I didn't hear him coming, and he dropped the plow right behind me. He said, "So I got a favor." I said, "What?" He said, "We have an opening on our commission." New word, I didn't know that before, but commission's just fine. And he said, "Would you mind?" And I said, "You know, I think I'd like to do that." So I volunteered to join up on the commission. And
Great, that's a good way of recruiting people,
yeah,
GH.
a good way of recruiting.
sure
If I'd
one-
said no, I think he probably would have just driven over me, but
If you ever need me for something, just tap me on the shoulder.
I suspect some of you know, I know Bill knows I've been in town a long time, but I
You served on
moved
some
here-
board about 30
Sorry?
years ago. You served on some board about 30
Oh,
years ago.
yeah, about 30 years ago, yeah. that
Maybe on
was
even
in
this
charge
board.
of
Of this guy?
hiring him.
That's what well, judging by the time frame, that's what I wanted to ask you. So you were involved in the hiring of Bill?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
And you briefly thought about, you did apply to.
I did
the
apply to
TA
be
screening committee.
to be on the commission, to hire the new administrator, and my life has changed in the last month since I agreed, and this woman seems to like hanging out with me, and I didn't
Okay.
want to hang out with you guys at night.
Okay, that's understandable. That's good.
So I decided to join the cemetery commission, which meets at 4 o'clock.
Well, I wanted to check your rationale. It sounds like you have a very legitimate rationale, so that's good to know.
But I, you know, I seriously, and I was telling Maureen, it's like, "You sure I can't do both?" And she's like, "No, the bylaws don't
Yeah.
allow you to do both."
Yeah.
But, so I think the commission will do fine, and I'm available if anybody wants my opinion, but.
Charter
that's-
that I think you might have been a selectman for when it was passed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, okay. Well, very good, and I definitely appreciate you stepping forward for the
Thank you.
cemetery
Thank you,
commission.
thank you. I think it's gonna be a great opportunity for me to get back into helping out. I
Good.
was recreation commissioner for a long time. I obviously was a selectman for a couple of years until my select board. I got a job traveling, and the select board waited till I was gone to vote controversial things.
Oh.
And I said, not gonna work.
That's what we do with Brian, so.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chet.
Well, we haven't voted yet.
Oh, haven't
No,
voted.
I haven't voted, so I was about to say, I will entertain a motion. Oh, well, before I do that, does the cemetery commission have a recommendation?
We have a recommendation by both committee members, myself, finding them, asking them, you see me down COA, interacting with other department heads and people down there, and mostly getting caught by people to ask questions about what's going on with our department. So he's observed me for some time. So he's
And I still want to join the commission.
So the other members, recommend,
Yep,
okay,
we voted on that, I think, last week, the 8th,
Yeah.
very good.
something like that, yep.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, on the recommendation of the Cemetery Commission, I move to appoint Chet Jacobs as a member of the Cemetery Commission to complete an unexpired 3-year term expiring June 30th, 2020.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to appoint Chet Jacobs to the Cemetery Commission for an unexpired term expiring June 30th, 2020. Further discussion?
Just want to say that as a liaison to the cemetery commission, I won't be able to attend as many meetings as I had in the past, so I'm counting on you to keep GH.
Keep an eye on
Yeah,
GH.
keep him from doing crazy stuff.
I'll do my best. It's not always possible,
I was
but
going to say,
I'll do
that
my
may
best.
be mission impossible. Yes.
Gotta be light on your feet.
Anything further? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that's unanimous. Thank you very much, Chet.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you for stepping
you.
forward. And GH, thanks for recruiting.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Now I can say thank
Been a
you.
long time.
Too many years, but a good choice.
Really, good job. Thank you. You got a
Thank
job
you.
in front of you.
GH, keep sending me meeting notices though.
Okay.
And now we have a very interesting, hi Claudia, do you want to join us? We have a very interesting item.
Yeah.
I don't know if my Girl Scouts want to
Come on.
They should come up.
Sure.
Why don't you girls come on up? Can you grab another chair? All right? Thank you. All right, there you are.
How do you do? Thanks for coming.
Hi, Correspondence, I'm Claudia. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Jim, good to see you again. Brian, nice to see you.
See you.
Mr. Wrigley.
Thanks for coming.
Very sorry that you're...
That's all right.
Glad you're still here. That's Emily and Aislinn.
So at the risk of stealing your thunder for the benefit of those at home, this is about a mural project for the giant concrete wall up Hartley Road going toward the middle school. And it's a great idea. You want to tell us more about it? And I know you have a deadline tomorrow too. So.
Yeah, okay, so the deadline, actually, I did talk to the commission today. So the situation with that is we can receive state funding. It's probably going to happen in fiscal year 2021. So it could actually happen more like July, we get the funding, and then we have to do crowdfunding or fundraising.
Mm-hmm.
But our Girl Scout troop is looking for a community service project, much like Boy Scouts do Eagle Scout projects. This is for a silver award or for some kind of a journey that the Girl Scouts can go on. So as part of that, we were looking at ways we could help, things in the town. And both of these girls are 6th graders at Hale in the middle school. So we're all looking at the big blank wall thinking, wouldn't it be nice to put some kind of art up there? So this is at the very early stages, but we have a lot of positive feedback, including the Stowe Cultural Council has agreed to help fund it. They're looking at how much they can give. We also have, again, the state grant that looks like a good possibility, but probably the earliest we would get it is July. So work wouldn't begin probably until August at the earliest.
Okay.
And then we'd look for community ways to involve the students at Hale and the community at large.
Girls, you want to say anything? Want to add anything to that?
Well, I just think it probably should be done because people drive past it every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be a good way for people to want to go to school because it just reminds you of just like boringness of a blank wall.
Yep. I would say I never would have thought of it on my own, but as soon as I saw the proposal, my first reaction was kind of, yeah, of course, that's exactly what is needed there. I used to drive a well-known highway in the Bronx, the Cross Bronx Expressway.
Okay.
And there was a section of it that was exactly like this. And so it was on both sides, and it kind of reminded me of that. And what it needs is a little bit of artwork to remind me of that.
Good. Yeah, I'm glad to hear you like that idea.
I just have one kind of substantive question. So, and that is, what exactly do you need from us tonight? And my instinct is that we can't, and I want to hear from my colleagues, but we can't or shouldn't just say, yeah, go and paint it.
Right.
That we should say, yes, absolutely, get started, come back and show us what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's probably what we want tonight is just, I guess, general approval to move forward with like design ideas, and then we would come back to you once we have our fundraising, once we have our ducks in a row with fundraising in place, especially because the other part of this project hopefully would be a couple of benches that's going to face the mural along that sidewalk, because kids are walking that way to and from school all the time, to and from the library. People are using Hale for the town, for the all the meetings, right?
Yep.
The annual town meetings. Hale's used for a lot of town purposes. Also, there are the apartments. Pilot Grove apartments are right around the corner, so we feel like the benches could be a good way to have people sit and take rests and things and look at the mural. So if we do go that route, it's going to take a little extra planning. Also with the facilities director, we have them on board. Mr. Grady, the principal, and the facilities director both approve of this whole idea. They just want to make sure, like the benches, whether they're going to be what they're going to be made out of and all the details.
Right.
So we have to work all that stuff out.
And Bill told you that's kind of a shared thing between us and the school, but you've got the school's permission.
Yep.
Sounded like you gave some thought to maintenance. I frankly don't know what kind of maintenance of mural and concrete benches, or presumably concrete.
Yeah, or some granite.
or granite require, maybe talk to the building inspector about that at some point?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
My colleagues, have anything to add, anything to say? Tom?
Well, I think it's a great idea. I thought I was going to be the only nudge that said we probably need to see what's going to go up there first.
Right.
You know, before we can give final approval, but
Yeah.
obviously Jim is thinking along the same lines, so I don't feel nearly as bad. But,
Absolutely.
you know, I saw some of the other pictures that, you know, of other type of artwork like that. You know, I'm on board with that kind of stuff.
Great.
But, as Jim said, I think we need to give final approval.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
or it set a bad precedent. And then the other thing is too, that if they put benches there, we'll probably have to do a separate thing to accept them, as we do with any other benches.
True.
Oh, yeah?
You know,
We have to
any
accept gifts.
any gifts
Okay.
like that have to be accepted by the
Right.
Board of Selectmen after review of what they are, and again, you know, because of maintenance, this, that, and the other thing.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and at that point, you know, what we generally require is, you know, specifications on them, and then run it by the building inspector and things, you know, all sorts of stuff like
Okay.
that.
What happens with the cemeteries and now park, people will offer us benches and tables, and we have
Oh, in
to
the
get-
new town park where the benches, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
it will happen there, but it happens often. I'm glad you brought that up. At the cemeteries, they offer, in one case, a gazebo, sometimes benches, and we have to look at the specifications, and the relevant department head has to say, yes, I can absorb whatever maintenance is required in there.
Right.
So that's probably a good idea.
Okay. All right.
Again, I don't know what maintenance would be required, except periodic painting, I suppose.
But that's
Yeah.
a good reason to talk to the building inspector
Yeah.
up front, because that way, you know, you can go back and forth, pick out something that he believes is suitable. That way he's endorsed it by the time you bring it here, and we can just,
Or as a practical matter, maybe that should be the facilities director in the show.
Well, yeah, that's, I think we would have to do a good walkthrough with the facilities
Yeah.
director. That's what Mr. Grady suggested.
Because they do snow clear, they do a lot of the maintenance on Hartley Road, they do
Exactly.
snow clearance and stuff, so it might, that maybe actually start with them.
Yeah.
But, long way of saying, unless, well, would you like to add something?
Yeah,
Yes, please.
I think it's a great idea, and I'm curious if you have any guidance that you're going to give whatever artist, or if you have any ideas that you are encouraging people to bring to the project.
Courtney is an artist, by the way, so she's asking for.
Well, then, hello, yeah. We would welcome your input, and we're at the very early stages. I think the girls have just started kind of Googling around, you know, getting ideas. We do hope to work with maybe a local Stowe artist. It could be, we have talked to Kristen Donovan. There's a couple of other people I have in mind that are in Stowe that have either are art teachers or, you know, have an art background, but I would love to get your input. In fact, I think the idea is that we get a lot of input from Hale, right, from the students at Hale, but also, you know, maybe have a town-wide discussion about it at some point. And try to have like a way for people to maybe vote on their favorite designs.
I think a public forum on a happy thing would be a nice idea, as opposed to, you know, toxins in the water and things like that. So, it's a good idea.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
have you ever thought of going to a Girl Scout meeting?
That's a very good idea.
Not previously.
If you're open to an invitation, maybe we could, yeah, we could give you an invitation.
Mr. Burke, you have anything to add? Oh,
No, I'm just looking forward to seeing you again when all your ducks are in a row and the plans are finalized.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for helping out your community in this lovely way.
Bill?
So I'm required by charter to just, it's probably obvious to you, but I just wanted to say, your unfettered discretion without fear or favor, so no portraits or
Oh. We can't have the selectmen on the wall.
I see him posturing over here, and I know he's worried, you know.
Our own local
The
Mount
implicit-
Rushmore, not a bad
But,
idea.
but now that you mention it, given the timing, maybe a portrait of
A
our town
monument.
administrator as he leaves
There
office.
you go.
Important Stowe people. Yeah, it's funny. That's the one thing I personally don't know. The girls are going to make probably the final decision, but I think it's hard on a mural to have likenesses of people. Like
Yeah.
and that's a whole that's a big level of detail. And this is a very big wall. Like, I don't know if you guys remember, but it is like almost a quarter of a mile long,
Yes.
this wall. So it's a lot of space to fill. Whether we do just like little chunks of it here and there, paint things, splashes on it, or we try to paint the entire wall is, again, still to be determined.
Anything's going to be an improvement. Okay. Mr. Kupczynski.
I just wanted to say that this was a proposal that was part of when that school was built. But they decided it was out of scope and out of budget. But there was an idea for a mural.
I figured someone must have had this idea.
It was going to do something about this, because it's on the ground. They were going to do a thing about the subterranean, like the things that live under the ground.
Oh.
And, kind of, because as you were looking at it, you can see that. But it was decided out of scope and out of budget.
Okay. Yeah, there's so many possibilities. There's so many great ideas.
Thanks for taking it up, all of you. So despite some of our nudgy questions and process details, I hope what you're really hearing is an enthusiastic green light here. Okay?
Yeah.
And do I have a motion?
Yes, you do. Mr. Chairman, I move to approve a permit for Girl Scout Troop 66156 of Stowe under the leadership of Claudia, Dragun, and Beth Warner to carry out a community service beautification project for the concrete retaining wall along Hartley Road. The Neshoba Regional School District has given its approval of the project, and funding will be sought from Mass Development, the Stowe Cultural Council, and private donations.
Will you accept the friendly amendment just based on our discussion to approve a permit conditioned on subject to design approval?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. So motion's been made and seconded to approve a permit subject to further design approval to do a beautification project involving a mural along Hartley Road. Do I have any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. That's an enthusiastic, unanimous yes. So please keep us informed about what you're doing.
Yes.
Not just the whatever we just called it.
The mural?
The design.
Oh, yeah.
But just let us know about your progress with fundraising and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep running.
Be happy to put you on the agenda to give us an update whenever you want.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I would love to be in touch with you. If I don't mind, I'll just email you if there's a time maybe we could meet.
Absolutely.
Yeah, get your ideas. Okay.
And invite me to a meeting.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah. The girls will get on that. Right? All right, thank you so much.
Very good.
One of the
Thank
other
you.
things too is if you do come back, Jim will be more than happy to give you a plug for fundraising and how to get a hold of you.
Right, yes.
For fundraising, things
That
like
is
that.
a big, right, we do hope the community can become involved, maybe like,
Right.
you know how with the Stowe Center School that we did the tiles for the fundraiser?
Yes, I do. I have one up there.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of our model, perhaps, to get interest in, just get the community involvement.
Mine says Jim Sally, age 50.
Well, we could all get your handprints on there maybe or something, I don't know.
Good idea.
Okay, all right.
Don't worry about us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Now, I wanted to get an update on, there's been an issue percolating around town about possible acquisition of the High Rock Church. And I realized that there had never been a formal, as far as I wasn't even sure that all the selectmen knew about it. And there had never been any kind of formal messaging with the selectmen. So I wanted to take care of that. Kathy and Laura, I think, and Jesse are spearheading this. So do you want to come up here? How do you want to do this?
So we're gonna need to show slides.
So we need to move?
And I'm gonna need somebody to get the projector working. And I have copies of the slides for everybody to kind of look on.
Sorry, I think those are the previous meeting.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't see them.
My bad.
So we need to move.
At least shift.
That was so cooperative with other people.
So then the correspondence package, what is
No, it's nice.
Oh, yeah, I've been talking about it in council on aging. Yeah.
Actually, why don't you stay there? I'll go over there.
I thought this was the chance to get closer.
I didn't hear that. I missed that one.
Wait, it was dropping the passenger numbers. That was the correct.
No, actually,
No, I wasn't.
All right.
All right, whenever you're ready.
All right, and if it's all right, I'm just going to stay here because we don't have a working clicker. So thank you for the opportunity to have some time on the agenda for this tonight. I'm Kathy Sparrow, I'm the Conservation Coordinator, and with me for the presentation is Jesse Stedman, the Planning Director. There are also representatives here from the Recreation Department, SMOT, and the Library, who I suspect you know all of them. And what we wanted to do tonight was give you an update on the opportunity that the town has been presented with to acquire the property on Great Road currently owned by High Rock Chapel. We are not here tonight asking you to make a decision on how to proceed, but really to do two things. One, to brief you about the opportunity and the interest that's been expressed by several town departments and boards, and then second, to seek your feedback on direction as we head toward town meeting in May. And I think this isn't quite perfectly focused. There's a little bit. That hurts my eyes. So that might be it. Jesse and I have been working with the pastor of High Rock Church, Will Barnett, since he came to us last fall to see if the town might have an interest in that position of the property. And I think some people are sort of asking, well, why is the Conservation Commission here? The commission actually has no interest in owning the property, but I had a previous relationship with Will Barnett over the construction of the park. So he came to Jesse and I've been assisting with the effort given my background in real estate negotiations and acquisition. So, if I get this to work. Oops. So I think everybody knows where the chapel is, but just kind of for orientation, some of the buildings that are in the center. High Rock is the property shown in blue, adjacent to the police station on Great Road. Just a little bit of background about the chapel, the former Union Church, Blue Door Church, now High Rock Chapel. The original structure was built in 1904 that sits out on Great Road. It is a historically significant structure, although it does not enjoy any formal protection. The Parish Hall addition was built in the 1960s, and then High Rock acquired the property from Union Church in 2016. They've been operating kind of a joint ministry between Acton and Stowe, and now they are building a new facility in Acton, or renovating facility in Acton, so they're going to move everything to that space, which means that they don't need this church anymore. The property is actually comprised of two parcels, and you can see them divided by the white line that runs through the middle of the parking lot. The chapel on one, the other parcel is just parking. The septic system for the church is actually under the parking lot, so it pretty much determines that the two parcels have to stay together. There are a total of about 1 1/3 acres, almost 200 feet of frontage on Great Road. There's about 5,000 square feet of building area, the smaller portion of that in the chapel, as you can see, and then about 3,000 square feet in the parish hall to the rear. The property is primarily zoned residential. There's a small portion of the property that's zoned recreation conservation in the rear. The property has an on-site well. As I mentioned, there's a septic system under the parking lot. And one of the significant things about this property is that that septic system was significantly upgraded during Union Church's ownership. They were planning on expanding the church. They installed a septic system for that expansion and then never did it. So there is excess capacity there. About 60 parking spaces. And then you can see the red dotted line. That is the approximate boundary of the right-of-way that the town owns across the property that provides access to Town Center Park, which is in the rear. And we have had an informal agreement with the church for shared parking, so that if we had an event going on, like the park opening that happened this fall, we can use some of the spaces in the church parking lot. This is a photo that shows the chapel itself in the front and then the parish hall to the back, so you can have a sense of the two buildings. And then this is standing out at Great Road looking in at the property, the church on the right, the main parking lot, and then the park is the trees and everything sort of to the left of the slide. where we are in this process. So we were approached by the church in the fall of 2019. They have offered the property to the town for $700,000. That's their asking price. We decided early on that in the absence of a better approach, we would use the Chapter 61 process, even though this property is not in chapter, to evaluate the site and find out what boards and departments might be interested in it. So we reached out to everyone sort of per the Chapter 61 process, got a lot of information about the property, and then kind of solicited groups and boards and committees that might be interested. Through that process, we had interest expressed by REC, by the library, and by SMOT. And then in addition, the police station expressed an interest if it could be accommodated in having a couple of additional parking spaces at the end of their parking lot where it touches the High Rock Church lot. And I've gone out and looked at it. I do think that would be possible. We did a tour of the property with the pastor, and then after that, all of the interested groups sat down and met, and I think you have the notes in your packet from that discussion. There was enough interest in the property that we decided it would be worth commissioning an appraisal to determine whether or not the church's asking price was realistic. And that appraisal actually was received yesterday. And it did determine, the appraisal actually came in at $700,000. So, you know, I think that's...
Go figure.
And really the highest and best use as a church. There is apparently a modest demand, largely by immigrant churches for new facilities. I think the biggest challenge for this church is the price. That may be a lot for them to afford. One of the things that we made everybody aware of when we had our meeting after the site visit was that the Community Preservation Committee had a deadline of December 1st for submittal of proposals if anyone was interested in using this facility for CPA eligible use. And there was a proposal submitted by the Rec Department for CPA funds for acquisition. Jesse actually worked with the building inspector and arranged a follow-up site visit by the building department staff to look a little bit at the structures and see what, you know, code changes would be needed and all of that to use the structures for public assembly purposes and kind of what condition everything was in. I'll talk about that a little bit after. There was a follow-up site visit by the library. And then I think sort of the bottom line is that the church has asked to know if the town is interested in the property as soon as possible, but you know, has indicated that annual town meeting in May was kind of a reasonable end point for us to make a decision about whether or not we were interested in purchase. They have retained a real estate agent. They are beginning to look for other prospective buyers. But I think kind of wanting to give us first dibs if the town is interested. So just a little bit of kind of a virtual tour of the property. This is the chapel itself in the main building. It's fairly small. There's a large pipe organ in the chapel, pews, new carpeting, new paint, and then there's a balcony that looks down on that main chapel area, which you can see on the right. In the basement of the main chapel building, the historic building, there is finished space. There are actually 4 or 5 small meeting rooms down in the basement. This is kind of a floor plan of that area, and so you can see the classroom areas. They could potentially be combined or used individually as program spaces. And this is kind of 3 of the examples of the small meeting rooms that are down there. And then looking from the main building basement into the parish hall in the rear, they are internally connected, but obviously not accessible as you get from one side to the other. And then this is the inside of the parish hall space, large meeting space, primary meeting space, and then 2 smaller meeting rooms or classrooms. There is a full commercial kitchen in that space, as well as a number of bathrooms, some accessible, some not accessible at present. The building department's evaluation was essentially that the chapel seemed like it was in pretty good condition, has a stone foundation, new heating system installed in the building. They felt that there were some wiring upgrades needed to bring the buildings up to code. They noted there was no exit signage. And then the parish hall, as they say, in condition typical of the period, built in the 60s. They felt like it was in fair condition. There was fire suppression needed in the kitchen, probable lead paint, and some access improvements that are needed. So you can just get a sense. I think they felt like there were no huge issues, but that there were some smaller things that would need to be dealt with for reuse of the space. Property value information, the FY20 assessment of the property is $721,000, and then as I mentioned, the appraisal just came in at $700,000. So I think options that are on the table at this point, and there may be others, but the ones that we've identified are to buy the property with CPA funds for recreation use. And a proposal has been submitted to the CPA for that acquisition. To buy the property with CPA funds for affordable housing, but no proposal has been submitted to date for that. To buy the property with municipal funds for library purposes. To buy the property with municipal funds for an unspecified use and decide later how we would use it. But obviously wouldn't want to commit CPA funds if we weren't sure how we were going to use it at this point. To pass on the opportunity, but to try to negotiate some kind of a formal parking agreement with the church for the park, or just to pass on the opportunity altogether. And I think that is kind of as much as we wanted to present at this point. I'm happy to answer questions.
Did you anticipate anything else as part of your formal presentation? Jesse?
Where's Jesse? Do you have anything to add at this point?
I think aside from the options, the only thing that I would add is that back in 2017, we did that space use feasibility study for town center. Obviously, at the time, High Rock Church was not considered, so the consideration of this kind of being an opportunity reshuffles the deck a little bit in that way. And so I think in addition to the options, there's just some interesting questions that will come about. Obviously, I'm sure there's a lot of different questions, but you know, if folks started moving from one space to another, what other spaces would open up? How would some folks in departments and others think about, you know, having a new space? How would that change maybe the way that they would have responded back at that report? So these are just some of the planning things we were thinking about in our office as this coming up. So obviously, open-ended questions.
Okay, so thank you. So the way I think I'd like to proceed, if it's okay with my colleagues, I want to hear some brief statements from the three interested departments about the nature of their interest, what at this very preliminary stage they think they would do if they have interest, if they continue to have interest. And then I guess we got to wrestle with the basic question that you want discussion, feedback, and direction on, which is we have to decide to do something or nothing by the May town meeting. And we, the Board of Selectmen, our role is to decide what goes on the warrant. We don't make any of these decisions, we just decide what, if anything, goes on the warrant. So we need to know whether we're going to have one article, 2 articles, 3 articles, 0 articles, whatever. We need to start figuring that out. So let me start, just because he's right here. I'll start with Mike. Do you guys, SMOT didn't make a proposal to CPC, but are you interested?
Yes, we did a financial analysis at $700,000 for an acre and a third. It's not feasible to do housing there by itself. It's just, you couldn't put enough units there, and most of the land is the parking lot. You can't really touch that. There's no ability to expand in the other direction because it's a steep thing down to a ravine. So you pretty much have to just use the footprint where it is, and most of the value is in the building. So you have to, you know, if you're going to pay that much money to reuse it, it would be pretty expensive to do it for. The only thing that we could come up with that would be financially feasible would be some sort of group home scenario for disabled folks or recovering folks or something along those lines, where each bedroom becomes a unit then.
In the existing structure.
In the existing structure, right. And that would be the only possibility.
Mr. Burke?
I have a quick question, Steve, if you don't mind. Is the reason you can't tear up the parking lot because of the septic system?
Yeah.
So, okay, just want to make sure I understood that. Thank
I
you.
mean, you could, but then you'd have to reconfigure that whole thing and it would be another expense. So our assumption was that without doing any engineering, is that that would not be
Okay, thanks.
desirable. But anyway, so that was the thought about to do that. There's some new rules this year in 2020, some new rules from about how the group homes are going to be count toward the SHI, the housing inventory. So there's a lot.
And changing it in a good way or a bad way?
Well, it just make it that instead of, it used to be just a bedroom had to be there, and now it's going to be a bedroom plus a small bathroom for each of those. So you'd have to build a bathroom in each unit.
So they can still count, just might
They
be
can
more
still count,
expensive.
so that, but it would probably mean fewer would be there and it would be more expensive. But what we thought of, and I had sent a note to Tim about this, was that it could be possible if we were in the context of a mixed use. So if there was some way to share multiple of the uses that are being discussed here, if we could do more than one in that building, then it may make more financial sense to spread the cost over multiple groups, and it's not all the cost of the land acquisition and the renovation will be all having to be recouped in the housing units. That would just make it very difficult to do. So that's the extent of our interest. I think, and my personal feeling is that this is pretty expensive for this land.
But now you didn't make a proposal to CPC, so would you be wanting to use CPC money, or would you be using town?
Well, I mean, if you use CPC funding for housing and you buy that, the only thing that can go there is housing. So you wouldn't be able to resell it, you wouldn't be able to use it for something else. So it would, until we know that was possible, it wouldn't make a lot of sense to use CPA funds for that.
Okay.
Because it would be restricted for only that purpose. I mean, you couldn't resell it, you couldn't rescind it. Once you bought it, you had to use it for that or not use it.
So acquiring the property for the mixed use that you just spoke about would have to be done with general funds?
General funds or a mix of, maybe some smart funds or whatever, some sort of mix of things, but that would be another.
Okay. Tim?
So you probably all remember in 2012 we wanted to renovate the existing library and came to the town with a proposal for $3.7 million, and that didn't come to pass. And more recently we have looked for and got design fund money to re-examine that proposal. And in that process I did a calculation of what that new construction would be like at the existing site, based on the cost accelerators that were used in the 2012 proposal, and came out just a little under $5 million. Presented that to the existing building committee that the library has for the new proposal to renovate, and we're lucky to have two architects on that committee, and both of them said no, that the cost accelerators that were used in 2012 are just no longer valid. It's instead of a 2.5–3%, it's more like 5 to 7%. And so what's that doing to the renovation project that we're looking at now is putting it.
Are those numbers in writing somewhere?
In writing?
Are they in writing? Did you?
I have, in fact, I might have sent you as a building committee member some of that ancillary background material.
But we didn't hire a consultant who came up with that. These are just,
what I was doing is, before we went and hired a consultant, find out, kind of do some cost estimate.
Okay.
And I used the cost estimator, had a cost estimate for the proposal and an accelerator for each year that the project was not going to be built. And believe it or not, we're 8 years down the road now. And that raised the 3.7 million to somewhere just under 5 million. And then the architects that we have on our building committee both said, no, it's now with the tariffs, the steel tariffs, the construction material tariffs that are for stuff coming in the country, it's more like 5 to 7% a year. And that's going to put it well north of $5 million. And at that point, we're going to have to decide about the viability of the project once we get a design firm to come in and give us a firm proposal. High Rock Church was not part of the conversation in 2012. It's now become part of the conversation. And it checks off a lot of the boxes that we were looking. And in addition to more space, it has the parking that the current site lacks. It's still in the center of town. And we could build a fully functioning library behind the existing High Rock Church as an alternative to renovating the current site. And if we're looking at a accelerated figure, a higher figure than what we were looking at back in 2012, that makes sense. So that's why we're interested in this parcel here, because it's a flat level construction site, can tear down the old parish hall, put a 2-story structure behind it. The church itself is the architectural feature for the site, so that the building does not have to be super fancy. And the question is, for us, would that be similar money as renovating the existing site? And it has the addition of having parking and future potential expansion if we have a growth in the community and down the road more library space is needed. In addition, we had some very interesting conversations with the rec department on 2 occasions, one after the site visit and then just more recently last week with Laura, the new library director, and myself, about the synergies that exist in this community between a rec department and a library, and the fact that the library would welcome these synergies because the library welcomes traffic and having people using its site, and that a new site at the library, at the High Rock Church would, if it incorporated an area that could be used by the rec department for a teen center, but also could be accessed by the library when the kids are in school, that's a really good synergy that we could develop. Having that site, if the town decides, if town meeting decides to renovate the existing library, one of the additions, one of the pluses of having that site in the town whole would be the library will have to move out of the existing library for about 2 years, and that could serve as a satellite library if that were to be the decision. So from my perspective, there's lots of possibilities for this. It provides the town some flexibility if it's looking to improve the library services in town.
Can I just ask, and thank you. So I thought from the materials that your thought, and I realize this is extremely early, but I thought that the thinking for the library was to build onto the existing structure, maybe build a second floor. Did I misunderstand that? You're actually thinking about a separate structure? A separate 2-story structure?
At this point, we're just brainstorming, Jim. Okay. So, I mean, and all proposals would be there, but as you saw from the evaluation of the site, that's an older structure. And if you want to maximize the parking for multiple town uses, taking that existing parish hall, tearing that down, and building a 2-story structure there with an accordion kind of junction with the church that would contain an elevator.
I'm just trying to focus this. So you're thinking about taking this part down and building a new structure.
That's one option.
Okay.
I mean, that's,
and I understand.
And there's no building committee or board of trustees.
Right.
But we're talking about possibilities.
And whatever the library, if it's used for library purposes, obviously it can't be funded. The acquisition or anything else can't be funded by CPC, I assume.
Correct, although the town could buy the church part as a historic structure.
Well, I think it's questionable whether the CPC can define, well, okay, maybe.
I mean, that's something that the
maybe
CPC would have to
okay.
research and decide if that's an acceptable use.
And the library does not currently have an application for State Library Commission building funds pending and doesn't have any plans.
They have not opened up a
Okay.
new round of funding for library construction.
Well, and we didn't make an application.
The list, we didn't make an application years ago.
Right.
That list has been slowly being worked on for the last 7 years, 8 years. They still aren't through it yet. So they're talking about perhaps in the next year or two opening up a new library construction fund.
Let me go to Laura. Did you have a question?
Yes, I had a question. I realize, as you said, you're just noodling these possibilities around for us, and I don't want to pin you down. I think we're brainstorming here. But I would like to get a sense of two things. First off, just to follow up on the chair's a question about the state library funding. One of the reasons I understood that we didn't apply 5 years ago was because the Randall Library didn't have enough parking spaces to qualify. Do I understand that correctly?
It's a competitive grant system, and we were told on numerous occasions that trying to redevelop, to renovate the existing site didn't hit all the boxes, and therefore our score would be low if they even, and there was a question whether they'd even accept that score, that low score for the waiting list for state funds.
Partly because of the parking
Partly
limitation.
because of parking, partly because of the square footage that we were looking at.
So, again, you can't make any predictions, but that possibility of state funding would be back in the mix, so to speak, if you were to take your plans and start thinking about them more seriously and deliberately. Not to say that you haven't been thinking about them seriously, but more deliberately and
if that grant round opens up, this next one, and this were to be the site that we would be wanting to develop, I think we could develop a very good proposal for a library in the scale of Boxborough, which is 12,000 square feet, which is the next smallest library in our neighboring communities.
So now wait a minute.
But
it was my understanding.
Let me finish,
okay.
Jim.
Okay.
Pounce.
No, you're heading toward a yes, but I thought the answer was no. You're not going to apply for funds, for state funds for this, right?
We had decided not to apply for state funds in the 2012 plan because the probability of us getting on the list was slim.
Are you going to apply for state funds to build new here?
If the town acquires the property and the state opens up a new round and the building committee proposes to the trustees to build on the site and the trustees approve, sure, yes, absolutely. But that's a process, that's the process that we have to go through.
I don't think you can pin down the library right now on something like that.
But at a building committee meeting, you definitely, did I miss, the woman in the back, weren't you shaking your head no?
Oh,
hi, I'm here. I'm the new library director.
Yeah.
You all met.
Oh, hi.
How do you do?
Hi.
This is Tina McAndrew. Andrew, no way. She's just recently joined us.
I met Bill. Hi, Tina. Nice to meet you. Hi.
We've met
Yes.
in the library. She comes to us from Leominster.
You can say, oh yeah.
She was the assistant librarian there.
Okay.
No, thank
And
you.
we're very lucky to have landed.
I was shaking my head earlier because on the current property of the library, it would be nearly impossible to get state funding.
Right.
Like Brian said, the parking, impossible, the square footage. There's so many criteria that we would have to hit to even get qualified for it and then to get approved. I wasn't thinking like Tim was just saying about on this property, but this would give us a better opportunity, absolutely.
So this is, I'm just trying to get this clear, this is different than what my understanding was.
Okay.
So you will be making, you do, if we buy this, you're going to make an application for state funds and wait however long it takes.
Tim Reed does not have the power at this point to make those statements. It has to be a building committee decision. The library building committee has to decide and then make a proposal to the trustees. And once they get that approval, move forward. But if you want to ask what my gut reaction is, from all the feedback that I've gotten from people in town, and Barbie Wolfenden did an extensive survey of seniors asking, the feeling at this point is that site would make a much better library than whatever we could do with the current library.
Yes, I know, but my question was about, because I heard at building committee meetings that we're not applying because it takes too long for this site. So I was wrong?
Jim, the discussion hasn't been totally fleshed out, but let me present a scenario for you. If the town were to buy this piece of property and the library's functioning as it is now in the old building, although it's not fully supplying the needs of the community. I had to put that in there. We can stay in that library while we go through the process of applying for state construction funds.
Okay.
And we would do that. I would think the building committee and the trustees would support that position.
Okay. Can I go on to rec, or do you?
No, I just want to follow up with a couple more questions. And by the way, I would not put you in a position where you've got to commit to applying for state funding tonight. It's something that you would be considering over time based upon the design
Well, I wouldn't,
proposed.
I just have to say, I wouldn't either, except for the fact that I have heard that they definitively that they weren't.
But that was for the old building.
No. My understanding certainly was for this.
I don't
Because it
recall
would
that
take two.
conversation.
Okay.
Very good. You can look at the minutes of the building.
At the last meeting, Jim, the last building committee meeting, which you were not at, we had a long conversation about this, because it's something that's new to us.
I'm glad to hear that state building funds for this site, if we went there, are in the plan.
And also in the plans if we have a target like this, which is concrete, the fundraising possibilities increase enormously in terms of going to the community and getting funds outside of the municipal, outside of the state.
Can I go to rec?
Just one more follow-up, because this is, I'm sorry we took such a detour down this library state funding application, but my question then is, what would you be doing with the old historic Randall Library?
Brian, that's not a decision, again,
I understand.
for the library board.
Have you given any thought to it whatsoever? But I'm just saying, conceptually, you're thinking potentially of abandoning that building and moving all the operations and the book stacks to this property, assuming everything falls into line.
Well, that's a possibility, yes. And that would leave, that's a possibility that would leave the existing library building open for new use.
I'm sorry to try to keep pulling ideas out of you, because I know this is very, very early in all of our collective minds.
I just want to reiterate that, I'm glad to have talked about the possibilities that have been discussed, but decisions can't be made by me.
No, obviously, and it is early, but it's also late, because the town meeting warrant, as a practical matter, has to be done in about 2 months, at least conceptually what items, and that's what we're responsible for. So, I do think at this point, conceptual ideas, including, I think, sources of funding for the proposed projects, are very relevant. But I want to hear from Recreation. Laura?
Hi, how you doing? You want me to stand?
Anything you want to do.
Oh, we'll switch.
So just
Jump up and down.
just tell us the nature of Recreation's interest in the.
So the recreation department is underserving two areas, which would be teens and special needs. And so my proposal would be to create a teen center for after school and then run some programs for stay-at-home parents and for special needs kids that don't have all the same schooling hours, and homeschool kids and stuff like that in the site. I'd also, I'm a very willing to share type of person, so I would be interested in working with the library if needed be. It comes to find out that we do duplicate programming quite a bit. And but they get all these grants and different things, and we charge a bunch of money for people to do certain programs. So regardless of whatever happens, me and Tina have gotten on the same page now to kind of work together. I could take the building as is with a few renovations and keep the building going while some other things may be going on, and grants and in programming. And then the question will be, well, we just got Pompo, why can't you do stuff there? And the seniors are doing an amazing job there, and they're taking, the space is taken. And I do all the scheduling for the building for in the evenings, and it's getting filled in that area as well. And the building's just not made to have a bunch of kids running around in it. And the church wouldn't, the rectory wouldn't either. And our idea for that would be to run, to have like small concerts, music lessons, so lectures, stuff like meetings, stuff like that. And the historical part of it, really keeping it closed off from the teen center programming side, and then just program out the other side of it.
So just something, I do understand the idea of a brand new kind of use, a teen center. Let's leave aside whether there's a demand for that. But are you saying part of the motivation for rec to go into this building is that there isn't enough space at the building that we built just 5 years ago?
Yeah. Well, we're getting to the point, but the thing is that the space isn't set up for recreation, for young kids to be running around, can't throw balls, we're worried about paint, we're worried about using the main hall, and we can't keep anything out, really.
What does this have that the Pompo doesn't?
It would be our space. You know, I'm trying to walk a thin line here because I do love my partnership with the COA. I think that we work very well together, so I want to state that clearly. But they're running craft classes and all these different things, and everything is everywhere. And to then say, okay, pack all that up because we're having a bunch of toddlers come in to do a program, it's just not working out. So we can't really do anything there during the day, besides a couple programs here and there that me and Allison talk about ahead of time. I schedule months out and do it. And then in the evening, we're running some programs, but so aren't all the schools. So the kids are at soccer, and we're just missing the times that we could really, and it would be, we could dedicate rooms to certain things.
Do you two have any questions at this point? I've got a few more, but I don't want to.
No, I'm just soaking it all in for the moment.
And then can I just add one more thing? So with the library, they're servicing about 50 to 75 teens a week, 3 days out of the week, because 2 of the days the library is not open when school is out. And I've gotten a lot of parents that are just saying they're just dropping their kids off at the library and they just hang out outside. And I just feel like that if we could do something about that, if we could get them out of the library, being able to do community work and to be able to have resources for them in a location like this, that it would just be a value to the town.
So am I correct to the extent that it would be a rec use, CPA funding is available?
Yeah.
Assuming, as either Mike or Tim suggested, that you can split it to the extent it is a rec use, we could use CPA if you share with the library. If you share with a non-CPA use, perhaps CPA can be used for part of the acquisition cost. Actually, we don't know that for sure. We have to find that out.
I think if CPA funds are used for the acquisition, the land is restricted to that purpose. If CPA funds are used for the development of the building, the construction, the renovation, then they could be divided, you know, to the extent the building was being divided.
So
Perhaps the funds.
I'm not sure I understand that. Are you saying that if the library is involved at all, that we can't acquire with CPA funds, or?
I don't believe so. I think the deed has to be restricted to be used for that purpose.
Could CPA funds be used to be allocated to the purchase of the parking lot or half of the parking lot?
Because for recreation.
Because it would be used, because it would be used to access the open land, which you just developed at the town park.
Right.
Because you don't have parking there.
We have a right of way. I mean, that's not my decision, it's for the community preservation committee, but I think that there does need to be a permanent restriction recorded in the deed that restricts the land to that CPA purpose.
All right, I think we can park that issue. Although, Mike, you want to add something?
I remain concerned about the CPA funds. Essentially, is the first group to the trough gets it, and that we're not making any systemic or policy decisions about how the town wants to use CPA funds. Essentially, the first, you know, if you can rally your troops and get out there, you know, the trough is open to you. And I think we should be looking at this, and I've said this in the past, but I think we should be looking at this as a townwide, as a policy about how we decide what the priorities are for how to use CPA funds, one way or another.
That sounds like more discussion for the CPC.
Well, it's for the town, but in their instructions to do CPC.
But right now, we've got a trough and 3 horses. So let's talk about that for a second. I'd like to...
Jim, I would just like to point out, although I am not a member of the CPC, I've done some research.
So I want to park CPC issues, Barbie, thank you.
Just can I make one statement about it?
Well, we have a CPC staff and we have a committee. So I want answers from them. So I don't know that any more discussions about what are you going to talk about what CPC money can be used for and what it
I
can't?
investigated Massachusetts' use of CPC funds, and they're much more liberal and broader than what has been shown.
I hope you share your findings you've shared your findings with the CPC committee, and we'll have to talk to them about, but that's what we pay them or their staff to do.
Yeah.
So I want to start,
Name and address.
Barbie Wolfenden, what's your address? We're not asking anybody else for their address.
Okay.
23 Heather Lane.
It's okay, Barbie, no, no. So, you're looking for direction. Let me ask you this question. It sounds like there's more hope than I originally thought of sending the 3 of you back. So, let me back up. I think I can speak for my colleagues to say that what we'd like to avoid, what everyone would like to avoid, is competing proposals at town meeting, if possible. So, it sounds like there's something to be gained from giving you some time for the 3 of you to get together and talk and see if, it doesn't sound like there's any hope of one compromise proposal that makes all of you happy. Okay. So is there still, so there's going to be more than one interest group for this property?
I'd be happy to take it on myself, but I think that if like, to be realistic though, if the rec department takes it on, that's like a big jump, you know, from, you know, that's more staffing, that's heating another building, that's, you know, so that's why I would definitely entertain the library use or somebody else to come in and help with that.
Well, let me ask you this, that reminds me of something I wanted to ask you. Currently, the town budget, the operating budget, paid by general revenue, pays basically your salary and not too much else from the rec department. Everything else, your programs, are paid by fees.
Correct.
If rec took over this building all by itself and you had a teen center, would you anticipate the same thing, or would you anticipate some impact on the operating budget?
I think there'd be impact, initially, definitely, initially impact on the operational budget, because we don't currently have the space to program so much, and we don't have the staff.
Okay.
So we wouldn't be able to just go in there, we'd go in there guns blazing, but we wouldn't go in there with all these programs existing.
So now I want to talk to my thank you. And now I want to talk to my colleagues. You guys sure, no questions?
Oh,
Please.
Now that I've, I wanted to listen to what everybody had to say to begin with. Because if I was making a decision today, what I would say is we may want to consider putting it onto the warrant, right? Buying it with town funds. Skip the CPA part of it. Because between now and town meeting, there's not a chance in heck that we are going to come up with any kind of decent proposal, all right, for what we're actually going to do with it. So, I'm just looking at it that we can let the voters know between now and then, or the voters will let us know whether they want to procure the property.
So you're saying
But
Kathy's option, don't tell me. Thing about
Buy it now and consider it.
Buy it now and consider it later.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
I don't think between now and town meeting, I don't think we would ever have the ability to fully flesh out anything. Now, that being said, I may get up and vote against it at town meeting. Reason being that, right now we're in the process and we've been there for 18 months looking at just doing the town hall. It's a small fortune. We're looking at close to $3.5 million just to reno that. All right? Now, if we take on another piece of property that then needs sprinklers and then needs reno, what kind of money are we going to be dropping into that? And then to Mike's point, what other opportunities might we be giving up? So, but I don't know at this point, all right? But I can't see saying, we're going to buy it with CPA funds and we're going to turn it over to rec. I would never vote for that.
Okay,
at this point.
I'm a little surprised you as a certified cheapskate passing up 2 possible CPA fund uses. I get the logic though. Let me hear from Courtney.
Well, I was just going to say that part of that is because I know what we're looking at for the town hall. If we want to save that, that may eat up most of the CPA funds. So,
you're right.
There's
That's a good point.
It's exactly what Mike said. There's a lot of competing interests on
Courtney,
this
what do you think?
All right, so
And again, our question is not what do we like.
no, yeah.
It's how are we going to approach the warrant and avoid a train wreck.
Right. So I think that because using CPA funds is going to restrict the use of the property, and the library won't easily fall within that unless we try to take the angle of historic renovation or restoration of the church, which the front is in pretty good shape. So trying to, so that's, first of all, the reason the town hall renovation at the moment is such a big number is because that project is trying to work with CPA funds under historic restoration. And in order to get certain things covered that normally wouldn't be, we can't phase the project and say, okay, I've got to sort of skim over, like fix the peeling paint and fix the structural problem in the basement and then take a rest and then put it in an elevator later. If we do that, the elevator won't be covered by CPA funds. So we have to roll it all into one project, and that's why that's really expensive. So using CPA funds really ties our hands when we're doing a project. If we try to apply that to this property, we're very restricted. So I believe that if we have an interest in this property, we should look at it from general funds or from some other funding source. Because it will,
with a specified use or just?
I think with with the understanding that we have a whole bunch of use proposals that are all have validity, and
What are you gonna say to
it's
the-
very exciting to hear that we have a piece of property available in the
Just to-
center of town. Kids can walk to it.
Well, just
You
to
know,
play devil's advocate.
It's right near the library already, you know.
Just to
it's-
play devil's advocate, what are you gonna say to the people who say, well, you've already got the old fire station, don't know what you're doing with. Now you've got town hall that you don't know what you're gonna do with in terms of use. At least one of these uses results in yet another building, the building that's on our town seal that you don't know what you're gonna do with. How many, I can hear it now, how many pieces of land and buildings that you don't know what you're gonna do with do you need?
And, oh, I'm sorry. My apologies.
It's okay. So I think part of the process needs to be a much more comprehensive examination of, I mean, again, revisiting studies that have been done in the past about building use, but looking at the scheduling that sounds like there's a ton of use at our community center. And we know we had previous users at the town hall. If it's a whiz-bang new building, there's going to be more people that want to use that. There are, and I mean, we haven't demolished our old fire station because we have a use for it. We're fixing things all over the place because we're still using it even though we've moved the fire department out there. I think all of these buildings, except that highway building across from the mechanics, which does need to be gotten rid of, seem to have uses. And I suspect that the library building will also have the old, if the library moves out, you know, look at the historical commission. They'd be absolutely delighted to run programs and fill the space and display objects and store things.
I'm interested in the town hall, but, okay, let me go to Brian. Brian?
I'll be brief. I agree very much with my colleagues, Mr. Ryan and Ms. Fraser. I think you buy the property, you then make a more comprehensive analysis of what possible uses it could be. It's $700,000. It's right next to our Stowe Center Park, and we need to keep that access open. It's a handsome building.
It's a beautiful building.
I'm not sure it's gonna suit our needs long term, but it's a handsome building. We buy it. I think we could get it for less than $700,000. But what do I know? Yeah, I agree with you, Steve. But you know, if we did get it, and we decided that because of these capital projects that are coming online, such as the Stowe Town Hall, and some of these other projects, we couldn't afford to use it the way we've just been generally noodling about today, then I think we could probably unload it. I just would hate to see it go into some kind of residential development. I don't think we'd have a problem unloading it if we had to. And pardon?
It's only 1.3 acres, it's not going to be much of a development.
Yeah, I know, but still, I hate to, you know, that's not the kind of use I'd like to see that parcel in that area of town put to. I'm willing to give people more time to think it out.
Okay. Yes,
That, you know, part of it is, what we're talking about doing is buying some time, right?
Right.
The other option that was on there was try to, or, you know, that was on the list, was to try to figure out how to carve off or come to an agreement on some parking. If we were to buy it and then resell it after the fact, we could work those rights out. The piece of property where the park is, well, there might be some gnashing and screaming if we ever decided to unturn it into a park, or change it from a park after we just spent a bunch of money on it. That piece of property is unrestricted. We specifically did that when we bought it. Other than the, you know, there is a piece of it that it does have the conservation restriction on it, or was bought with the CPA, but the park area is unrestricted.
Right.
So the thing is to have another piece of property, and again, I'm not saying I'm in favor of it, but the only way that I would be, I think, in favor of putting it on the warrant right now would be with unrestricted funds, gives us the flexibility. We can you know, because we're not gonna have a good plan in the next 3 months, or even 2 months, you know,
Okay.
less.
So I think we're giving the, I mean, I'll state my own position. I'm sort of coming around, I think, to where Mr. Ryan is. I've been surprisingly underwhelmed by the descriptions of the proposed uses today, or tonight. So I think kicking the can and giving people more time makes some sense. I actually think $700,000 is a good price. Sure, if we can get it less, great, but I thought that was a very good price. It is a beautiful building. It has to be preserved. That sanctuary is just beautiful. We have to get Mass Historical in here right away and tell us what's valuable and what's not. But it does give us more time to think about it. I had assumed that there'd be proposals to buy it and then funding for concept design, which is where you kind of do your thinking. So I guess you're getting feedback from the board that we're inclined to put, I'm with Mr. Ryan in the sense that I don't know if I'm going to vote for this. Because like I said, I'm starting to be one of the people who's got problems with too many extra parcels of land and vacant buildings. But I believe there's a difference between what I would do and what I would give the voters a chance to vote on. And I think right now the best thing for them to have a chance to vote on is unrestricted, just acquisition and sort of kick the can. Yes?
Sorry, quick question just from like a general voters.
Tell us your name again. I know I met you.
Yeah, Kat Copeland, 234 West Acton Road.
That's okay.
Say that. I would say, like, from a voter standpoint, I feel like sometimes things like library and rec would be a great joining, but if someone were proposed, like if it can be anything and that may potentially be affordable housing, I feel like that's always a hot button issue in terms of like voters. So I just like, I know, poor guy. So I just feel like in some ways, like if there's like a proposal that's like library and rec want to use the space versus like library and rec and potentially affordable housing, like you might have a better chance of getting something passed if you excluded the...
Well,
the poor Mike.
To say true.
He knows.
I think we either know we're going to do with it or we don't.
Right.
And I think we don't. So I don't see the logic in excluding or diminishing anything. Based on our brief conversations tonight, personally, just me, I actually thought one of the best potential uses was affordable housing. It does not have immediate neighbors. It is in the center of one of our centers of town. The group home thing, I've always had to understand there is always a need for that, although there is something similar in Maynard, but it's very small. I thought that was very interesting, but...
I mean, we already have multiple group homes.
Yes, we do. Yeah. We lost one, actually.
He also just didn't seem super eager, like the other.
Well, no.
The money was, I mean, we have a different standard here, is that we are expected to be able to produce units on a budget.
Right.
And we just don't go to the well and say, oh, let's spend $1 million here, $1 million there. We try to keep, with direction from the board, between $100,000 and $150,000 per unit of subsidy, because we sell these units for what, you know, we build them for more, we sell part of it, and there's a subsidy. So we have a pretty strict budget, so we can't have a fanciful flight. We work out the numbers, and at $700,000 to start with makes it really expensive for us to get under that budget.
Right, and I think part of, you know, what I'm not going to speak for Mr. Kupczynski, but I would imagine that part of his hesitation is just the tight time frame. Plus that they actually have to, as he said, have sort of a money-making operation. I feel like we're sort of closing this out.
Just a quick,
yes.
I just want to say that I came here tonight with the intention of just answering some questions.
Yeah.
So when you say, you know, you're underwhelmed by our proposals and so forth, that wasn't my intention of coming here and presenting you with
no, I understand.
Just some ideas of what, you know, and there was a deadline for CPC, and it was kind of brought to me like, hey, you got to do this now.
No,
so I don't want you to feel like that I'm presenting you with a haphazard Because I wasn't there, I wasn't sure, wasn't aware that was.
What I kind of meant by that was, I'm not hearing anything that says we gotta buy it for this purpose. This is just absolutely necessary. And that gets to Mr. Ryan's point, we may not be ready to say what it is. I will say, just speaking for myself, I don't know if anybody else, to the extent your rationale is that it's tough to share at Pompo, there are other ways to address that. And that truly is a concern. The answer is not spending more money on another building. Not at this point, not when we got a brand new, well, okay, it's not brand new, but it's 5 years old. And before 5 years ago, everybody in that building had a hell of a lot less space. And that was right.
Yeah, the last thing I want to say is the spending of 700 grand on the property doesn't scare me nearly as much as spending millions more afterwards doing something with it.
Right,
All right? And, you know, knowing we've got the town hall, we're looking at $3.5 million. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to sell that to anybody in town. So the thing is, when we start looking at spending 700 grand to buy another beautiful building that, as you said, you know, it's gorgeous. Love to save it. But what are we going to end up having to dump into that later on, as well as increased programming costs, so on and so forth, right? It all just starts to escalate, and I feel like, you know, so the 700 doesn't scare me. It's everything that comes after that scares them.
I agree.
Heck out of it.
I agree with that. And also, I just want to check, Tim, you weren't saying, I don't think, that the trustees have lost interest in the renovation of the Randall building if this property isn't available. When you were talking about the escalator and everything like that, you weren't saying, you weren't implying, I do the inferring, that the cost there have skyrocketed so much that you're no longer interested in that. You were saying that that would be still your second to this, the High Rock, right?
One of the purposes of getting design funds was to get a viable, a new cost estimate for renovating Randall Library. That would be step one if we continue down that path. Step two is looking at that number and deciding whether that's a good value for the town. So I can't answer your question other than we need to get, if that is going to be the route we take, we need to get that number and decide whether that's a good value for the town.
So I'm taking from that you haven't taken it off the table.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, we don't own this piece of property yet. If we don't do something in 4 months, we won't have it, and then that property will be off the table, and then I'm sure you'll be...
I was just making sure of that.
Oh. Yes,
okay.
Yeah. I hope I think my answer was clear enough.
It is now.
Right.
Okay, good.
And that's it. This just, to me, it just seemed to be throwing some ideas around and how we might want to do this. And, you know, the information I heard told me the direction I'd go. Doesn't tell me whether I'm going to vote for it or not yet, but that's the direction I'd go.
Kathy, you want to add anything?
Just two thoughts, random thoughts. I think, you know, I have detailed notes and I've been listening. I think there's one kind of take on going to town meeting to ask for general funds for an unspecified purpose that puts off some hard conversations that I think should be happening now to try to come up with a unified vision for the property among the groups that are here that would make any town meeting presentation to voters much more compelling than we're going to figure it out later. So I guess I hope that those conversations can continue to happen. And then my second random point is there is going to have to be a negotiation with the property owner to arrive at a price, to arrive at an agreement that's contingent on town meeting vote. And there are a lot of players, so we just have to figure out how that's going to happen.
I agree. You know, when we get to the escalator that Tim was talking about, every year that we don't do anything on either project, whether the renovation, whether building something here, it makes it more costly. So I would think if, and I'm glad to hear this, if seeking state funds for library construction is on the table, I would imagine there's no reason that that can't be pursued right now. I was just talking to Kate Hogan about that, and there is no bigger library advocate in this town than Kate Hogan. And it certainly sounds to me like money is available from the state. So why don't we have a meeting with her and talk about that? Bill?
Just a couple of thoughts. First is that what's being discussed this evening as a short list of possible municipal uses, singularly or collectively shared, is similar to what we did a number of years ago on the piece we just put the center, what we're calling this the center conservation park. Because in fact we got to the point that it was a short list. We didn't have any, because we considered a fire station there after we acquired it. Right. And there was possible water source. We went in there with a larger list, and you'll go into this one on possibilities, and they were less direct and certain than these are. It seems to me what I heard tonight is that given a little more time, they can solidify, say, the library with the rec on it. What I'd be interested in knowing is, and it might take a professional to do it, in $700,000 with prospective future municipal use, when you debt that out, short money. The real money is going to be in the development of the site and or the building. And what you'd want to do is compare the cost with time value of money on the old proposal, if it's similar to the new ones on space use and square footage, to a new structure down there. And that's what a consultant could give you. And it might be that building on that new site on the back end saves so much money that the $700,000 will be the short end of what we're doing here, and you debt it out over time. It's really not. I would say if the proposals here in their present form, but obviously fleshed out some, which you can do, would be enough to go to town meeting and let the voters decide. But it's more direct and certain than what we did when we bought what is now this center. We had water, conservation, possible facility use, the rest of it, and it was bought, and we actually conceptualized putting a fire station there and went in the other direction.
We were also thinking about affordable housing, weren't we?
Yeah, it was a larger number is what I'm saying, of possible uses.
And that's it. And town meetings decided they didn't want affordable housing there, so moved on. You know, and it became...
I mean, we bought the property without knowing what we were going to use it for, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. Tim, could I just ask the town manager a question? A process, because that would be ideal from the library building committee's perspective, is to get evaluation of both building processes and to see which one makes the most sense for the town. And right now we have that pocket of money that was voted by the town last year for a consultant for the renovation of Randall Library, but the language is very specific. Is it possible that the building committee, library building committee, kind of hold off hiring a consultant and going to town meeting to get that language changed? It's not to vote any new money, but to take that pocket of money that we already have and you do it to do a comparative study between the two sites.
Yes, the only way you could do anything different, and we've had this conversation, the language in the motion that was approved is for Randall Library. You could return to the annual town meeting, ask to revisit, rescind the earlier vote, and keep the same amount of money and just change the purposes.
Because the two architects were all ready to go down that route until we found the restrictive language was not going to allow us that. So I think they feel the pot of money is enough to do both proposals. Really? And that would, and I think for the town's sake, again, we've got to find out, it is very expensive, it's becoming very expensive to renovate, as Mr. Ryan has pointed out, that with the town hall, I'm afraid for the library construction, the renovation of the existing building, that cost is much higher than we might want to swallow. And that new construction on a flat level site may give us a better option.
From an engineering perspective, it will take less money to do what I've just described. In other words, a feasibility study, essentially, and then with that, a preliminary cost estimate of the two, making certain assumptions. Say you use the concept that you have to, square footage essentially, that's all you really need to get a per square foot cost. So it's cost estimating with concept. That's less expensive than what you are going to try to get here under the existing one. Now, would that amount of money cover both? I don't know today, but I'm just saying it's not a heavy lift from the engineering end. It's a cost estimator. It's making assumptions on square footage based on discussion with the community, which I think you probably have. I think it was, if I remember correctly, the expanded ad reno back, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think expanded out to 9 or 10,000 square feet, 8 to 10?
It would be total 10.
Yeah. So you've got the square footage for, and that was done with a space use plan. So you had already laid out what you wanted to do for space use, and that's where you get into the more expensive things. So you've got that done. It's just feasibility then. Will the site handle it? And then you cost out ad reno, basically with escalation here, as opposed to if what you're proposing is basically a new build, stick build.
And the advantage of the High Rock site is that parish, the old church itself is an ideal meeting space, and all libraries need a meeting space, and that immediately deducts that from what you have to build in the back. So not only do you have your meeting space, but you also have offices space down below. So you're not looking at a 10 to 12,000 square foot addition. You're looking more to a 6,000 to 8,000 square foot addition.
In any event, the engineers would flesh that out together with the future effective use of the current library. You'd want that done. I.e., you might want to say, look, given the cost of that scabbed-on addition in the 60s, let's take it off. I mean, we've put a ton of money into just water proofing, and I'm not sure we've done it for a long term, but we've stopped the leaks, but that's not a preferred long term.
Leaks.
Well, so anyway, it proves my point,
Yes.
which is, you know, one of the things you'd want to do is, even if you don't know what the future use is, but it could be a great historical society, which is one thing I think the town, and I think I mentioned it for the town hall as well, you know. But the problem with the town hall is on a cost benefit, just to bring up the code, which doesn't seem to be the problem with this building. Most of the driver here is the code cost on the hall, the town hall. And you wouldn't have that if what I'm hearing is true, A, because you're new build here, and the rest of it, if it looks like when the building was inspected, pretty solid as a structure, the code violations aren't nearly as substantial as we're facing, because we've got foundation issues. You go down the list. There's not much about the town hall that for code. The big unknown, and we need to keep in mind, is if, depending on its use of any of these buildings, is the fire suppression. Because not only what the code will require, depending on what as you aggregate large numbers of people in an area, there's going to be a lot of pressure that you get a full-size fire suppression. And even if the code doesn't require it, I know the fire chief is advocating for it strongly, as you would as a public safety, putting a lot of people in. Huge expense.
Kathy, isn't there fire suppression for that church already?
There's not.
There's the pond, you can put a pump in it.
So we still have a substantial, yes.
So Tim was talking about, you can reduce the size of the program by the fact that you already have meeting space, but I just feel like I have to say on Laura's benefit, if you're really talking about sharing that space, you need to factor that into the program as well. So it may not decrease the size of the building. I don't know.
Right.
But those are the conversations that I think have to happen.
That probably makes Mr. Ryan's point better, that we can't answer all this stuff. So we still have a substantial agenda to get through. I want to thank you all for this.
Thank you for listening.
I hope you got all the, whatever it was, discussion, feedback, and direction that you asked for. So thank you.
Well, I think,
And I didn't think you were
I think, you know, what we need to do now,
No, you're
go to the town meeting, at least at this point.
Sounds like it's
I don't think you're going to refer it. I'm always teasing.
Of course it's underwhelming.
We'll probably have another discussion on it.
When you face
I've been doing this long enough. There's no surprises here.
Yours, Mike, yours was the closest to overwhelmed. Or at least
Welding.
At least well, even.
Underwhelmed.
Neither under nor overwhelmed.
Yeah. Does that make you feel better?
Just right. Not underwhelmed, not overwhelmed, well.
I was a little overly underwhelmed.
All right. So our next discussion, did we lose Mr. Wright? We did. That's okay. He'll be back. Our next discussion is about the election warrant, and I saw the town clerk lurking out there despite. Are you okay? Are you sick?
Quieter.
I left word for you. I didn't think you really needed to be here tonight, but we appreciate you being here. So the first item is to set the date for this May's annual election, which I think is the date is set by charter anyway, isn't it, Linda? Bylaw. Thank you. And it is scheduled for Tuesday the 12th. And the warrant, the proposed election warrant is set for. The only addition is one, obviously, extra selectman seat from Don's unexpired term, which expires in 2021. Everything else is about what we would expect. Any discussion on that, on setting the regular election ballot? The regular election and warrant.
So we're going to do it all in one, open the warrant, close the warrant, and the election day.
No, not close the warrant. Well, set the closing motions.
And you know something I just realized? I thought this is what you were going to ask me. It was going to be a good catch, but you didn't do it. But you reminded me. First, we have to discuss the possibility of a special election because the warrant here has Don's term in it. So let's discuss that. I just put this on the agenda to make sure that we considered it. I've been asked by a few people why we aren't just appointing someone to fill Don's vacancy, and the answer to that is that we can't. The selectmen are the only elected board where you can't appoint someone to fill the vacancy. All the other boards, when there's a vacancy, they meet with us in joint session, and as one board, we can fill the vacancy pending the next election. We can't do that. You can only fill a selectman spot by election. Now, typically, you would call a special election, but when a selectman resigns, Linda, correct me if I get this wrong, when a selectman resigns less than 6 months before a scheduled annual election, you may wait until the regularly scheduled election. You don't have to, but you may. Where we are right now, were we to schedule a special election to fill Don's seat, the earliest we could have that election would be March 21st, so third week in March, which is roughly 7 weeks before
Four selectmen's meetings.
4 selectmen's meetings, 7 weeks or so before the next annual election. So, I mean, I probably indicated how I feel about that. I don't think it's really worth it. Elections cost money, and they are some work. Does anybody disagree? Does anybody want to do something different?
No, that's the whole reason I didn't mention it, because it wasn't a good idea.
You're just ready to sweep it under the table.
But we have to deal with this before we do with the other thing.
Fine, okay, you've got my point.
So
I agree that it's not worth the expense for
7 weeks.
For a couple of weeks, yeah.
Okay.
I concur.
Okay, so now let's go back to the regular thing, which is just setting the election date and the warrant, which will include Don's unexpired terms. Do I have a motion?
For the town meeting warrant?
Yes, for the annual town meeting warrant dates.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board open the May 4th, 2020 annual town meeting warrant on January 14th, 2020, that's tonight, and close the warrant on March 6th, 2020.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to open the warrant for the annual election tonight. Close. I'm sorry. The motion is to open the warrant for the annual town meeting tonight and close it on March 6th. Further discussion. So this is a little bit different than what we were just talking about, but it's related. Further discussion. Seeing, hearing none. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And now, sorry, Courtney, the election itself.
I didn't give them to you out of order as you requested.
Do we have to do also the annual town meeting date?
We just did that.
That's what we just did.
I thought that we
just
opened and
voted
closed the
yesterday.
warrant. I didn't know we did schedule
Well,
the
it
town
included
meeting.
the town meeting.
It did not mention the
Yeah,
town meeting
open
date.
the, it said open the May 4th, 2020 annual town meeting.
Oh, get out of here, don't worry.
So, and the date of the annual town meeting is set by charter, also by law, so.
The first Monday in May, with the election following, 8 days following.
It's set already.
It's set already.
Right.
So, moving on to the elections.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the annual town election be held on Tuesday, May 12th, 2020 at Center School, 403 Great Road, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. for the following offices.
I think you can just say for the offices as set.
For the offices
in this document.
listed in this document.
Okay. Second. And that will make this part of the record. Okay. Motion made and seconded to set the annual town election for Tuesday, May 12th at Center School, 7 to 8 p.m. for usual set of offices plus one unexpired 3-year term on the Board of Selectmen expiring in 2021. Further discussion. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that's unanimous. All right, very good, thank you. You all set?
Yep.
So I told you you didn't have to come in, so,
I just wanted to be here in case there were any
just in
other
case.
questions.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Just in case we decided we were gonna do something silly, like try to schedule a special
I
election in
didn't
April.
say that.
But you were thinking it.
She was prepared.
I'm prepared. I always want to be prepared to answer your question.
So,
Thank
we
you.
have a proposal from the new highway superintendent to declare certain pieces of property surplus, a tow behind street sweeper that has been replaced by another piece of equipment, 2 older snow plows from trucks that were sold and replaced with different style of plows, and a 1972 paver. And as one would expect, parts are no longer made for that paver, and the cost to refurbish it would not be cost effective. And also a Kubota tractor with a sickle bar mower, which has been replaced with a new mower attachment for a front end loader. Further discussion on, any discussion on this?
I think it's a great idea. I'm glad that,
Clear out the yard.
I have one
Apologize.
question, and the town administrator may or may not know, and if he doesn't, I'm just going to vote for it.
I don't know.
The Kubota, the Kubota
Can he just say he
tractor,
said he'd vote for it?
is that a Kubota tractor with a mower attachment? And my point is, could you take the attachment off and still keep the Kubota?
I don't know.
Okay, let's just go. I think Steve knows what he's doing, so.
It sounds to
who would've
me
thought of that?
to like they can maintain one less piece of equipment by using the mower attachment for their front end loader.
Yeah, so maybe.
And so they're getting rid of a
They're
tractor that
swapping
they need
out
to maintain.
because they've
He's
got an
basically
attachment
swapping
that goes with a
out.
larger
Okay.
piece of equipment, which does a better job, more efficient.
All right,
so
I
they don't
just
need
thought
the
there's
other
always a
piece.
use for another Kubota, but.
this is a great trend.
Yeah, and
We've been doing it
I'd
for a long
actually had a
time.
conversation with Steve, you know, that I knew he was
No, we just-
he's planning on getting some other equipment,
So
which
it's
is
probably
chapter
full.
90 funds,
I
especially like the
say.
paver. You know, and it doesn't work anymore, so.
Right, okay.
So this is, I think this is part of his plan.
So do I have a motion?
You do. I move we declare as surplus, plus the items listed below that we've just been discussing belonging to the highway department, and to authorize the disposal of these surplus items.
On the municipal auction site.
Doesn't have to be, but they do.
That was not.
Second.
I was going to say, I didn't get a second. A motion been made and seconded to declare as surplus the items listed and which I just spoke about. Further discussion. Seeing, hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And sure, Mr. Burke will be the first to bid on that tractor with the
Kubota.
mower. So,
What would I do with it?
I don't know, I'm sure you have somebody else mow your lawn, so.
Get whacked with a conflict of interest. I don't know.
All right, very good. And now we have the selectmen's budgets approval. You've got several budgets. Maureen, do you want to present these?
Sure.
Let's just talk about the operating budget first.
Sure.
It looks to me like the operating budget is pretty much level. The only significant increase is you're getting your last step increase, right?
I've been at that.
No, she made this, I took a quick look only because it was
Yeah.
coming up this evening, but that line item, the salary she put in for this year is not the salary she's got. At $60,268, she put in what it would have been before we gave her the increase for, if you remember last year, I bumped it up. So it's only 2.5% increase above. So that's what she put in. Just got to rough, 57,000 is not what she made this year, it's 60,278.
Oh.
So if you take, then if you get to the 61, it's 2 points. So she did the multiplier correctly, she had an old figure.
Okay. So the fiscal 2020 salary is incorrect. It should be a little bit higher, and therefore the increase is only the COLA.
Yeah.
Okay.
This year Julie gave everyone the numbers beforehand, which was really helpful, what their rate should be with the 2.5% increase.
Okay. Did everybody follow that? Basically no salary increases, just the 2.5% COLA. So do I have any questions on the operating budget? Maureen, you made some comment on membership dues and subscriptions, which is going up. And
Right.
so what's the story there?
Each year MMA increases our dues, which is our biggest dues that we pay. And then there are other small organizations we belong to as well that each year it's a small percentage. They estimate how much of a percentage it will go up when we call in the fall to ask.
So what are we in other than the MMA? What is this office?
We were in a procurement, I was in a procurement group. I don't know if I'm still in that, but
But the increase is basically the MMA?
yeah. This year they bumped it up a little more than usual. We still don't know exactly what it will be in July.
So, but are you comfortable right now with the 8,700? That's what you bumped up to, right?
Right.
Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I suppose that brings up one question. What do we get for our MMA membership?
That book they send us.
Yeah, they send us stuff every month.
You get the beacon every 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's the beacon. That's what I
To each
meant.
one of you.
That's right.
We appreciate the trainings. They put on a lot of various trainings.
Yeah, I think it would be pretty unusual for a selectman's office or a town not to be.
Especially if we're gonna start advertising for a town administrator.
Yeah. Right.
Well, they're gonna charge us for that anyway, I'm
I
sorry.
know, but I
It's a
mean,
little bit more if you're not a member, but
No, I just figured I'd ask.
Yeah, no, I know. All right, do I have a motion on the operating budget? I did not, or any other questions, I'm sorry.
Last year, didn't we just basically leave this up to Bill to work it out?
Well, I'm gonna make a
No.
recommendation on the budget. This is,
Yeah.
I request of every department each year in my budget message that if you report to a board, that the budget should be reviewed and approved from them before I get it, so I have that knowledge. In the end,
You're still gonna-
my recommendations are gonna be my recommendations. you know.
This
now
is
you know
just,
the pain of all
this is
garbage.
just the finalizing the department's request to Bill.
I want the board that the department head reports to, I want to know that they saw the budget before it got to me.
Actually, last year we had extended discussion about this because there was a raise proposed.
Right, and then we basically, I think, said, yep, we know about it, Bill will deal with it. And
Well, yeah, we
didn't necessarily vote on it, but.
Well,
Mr. Chair, may I make a motion?
Yes.
I vote that we approve all the budgets that have been presented. Weights and measures, our selectmen's administrative administrative budget,
The operating budget,
the operating budget,
insurance,
everything that's in the spreadsheet, I say we
town
approve it.
reports,
I
and
move we
Good with
approve
that?
it.
Sure.
Okay.
I was gonna offer him the language that written out, but
I looked through
I
this.
I
stumbled
There wasn't
understood,
anything
I
that
understood what
jumped
you
up.
said.
My
To
only,
explain it.
right,
Yeah.
my
The
only
second.
question was what happened to the Selectmen's Engineering Fund, which used to be 10,000, and I guess we've just spent about half of it.
So it had probably peaked at 3 or 4 years ago, and since then, you've used some of it each year.
Yeah,
The question, and so it's what, a little under $6,000 right now?
yeah.
So I'll just say this to it, let's say you voted to up it, unless there was a compelling reason to, what I'd be arguing is that, you know, at almost $6,000, given the trend in the last several years, without a compelling reason or something you knew in advance that you might need a few thousand, because we share that account essentially. It's no longer really the engineering account, it's the small purchase account that both the selectman and the town administrator have access to. And so at this moment, I probably wouldn't be inclined to increase it unless there was some reason to.
I'm fine.
And so there's no request in there by Maureen to increase it, so I'd be saying okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I had a memory, was it 10,000? And
It was probably several years ago.
I was going to say, I'm probably remembering several years ago we spent out of it, so, okay. Motion has been made and seconded to approve all the budgets, operating budget, insurance, town reports, and weights and measures.
And we'll have a substantial discussion on the insurance.
Right,
And
right.
so when we get to it, I have things that I asked for, and they did a very good job last year, Maya did, for the first time in a number of years, to really give me, they were bound up and all the rest of it. I won't ask for as much this year, but I'll be asking for a little more, but we'll go through that process when we meet and talk.
Further discussion? Seeing, hearing none. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, very good. Thank you, Maureen. It's usually on the ones. Oh, yeah, all time in the world.
That's what makes you such a great leader.
Yeah. Trying to make everybody happy. You had in your, well, not in your packets, in the town administrator's report, a draft of a posting for the actual town administrator position. Did everybody have a chance to take a look at that?
Yeah.
I'd seen it before.
You'd seen it before. I guess I think we could use a vote on that.
Be nice.
So, any comments on it?
You sure you want to do this, Bill?
Seemed comprehensive and
I'm
concise.
dragging a leg now, for Christ's sakes, I don't know if I can make it August.
So do I have a motion on that?
Sure, I move that we accept
You don't want to
the
start-
town administrator's
start dropping passes in the number- at the
posting
number.
for his
Like there
successor as written.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept the posting for the town administrator position as written. Further discussion. Seeing, hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye, with
Aye.
a great deal of nostalgia.
Yes.
I want to do my liaison report really out of place, or part of it, just because it's kind of related to this topic. You all know that we're scheduled to have our all-day interview session on February 1st, right? So I hope we kept that open.
How did we get notified about that?
We talked about it at the last meeting.
You were in
And
Mexico.
I handed out a timeline. We have a total, I think with Chet dropping out, and we had one applicant whose application came in too late that I felt like I had to say no to, and I think I emailed you all about that. I think we have 11 total, so no?
No, we have less because of that. I think we had 11, you're 9 now because Chet,
Okay,
and you had omitted, or you had taken out.
yeah. The
Chris
deadline,
Sarno come in after 3 p.m.
like 5:40, and I didn't feel like, one other, to be perfectly honest, one other application came in at like 3:04, and I just said, clocks can be different at different places, so I'm not gonna, but 5:40 I felt like I had to.
Well, you're a great leader.
Yeah, I know, I make those hard decisions, that's why I'll be in profiles and courage right next to you. So the only other complication, one applicant has asked to be interviewed in the morning, which I'm sure we can accommodate. Another applicant can't make it that day, has another conflicting meeting. So my thought was to interview her beforehand, because on our timeline, when we're done with the interviews on February 1st, we kind of want to be done. And we want to go right to doing our individual scoring and then making a decision. Does that sound okay? So I'll schedule one interview for a screening committee applicant on January 28th.
Just send us out an email confirming
That'll be
that.
at a regular meeting. That'll be at our regular meeting.
Yes, at our regular meeting.
Oh,
At
okay.
our regular meeting, yeah.
But what's the target number we're looking for?
Well, 5 total. And when I should tell, if we're going to have an applicant interview on January 28th, we have to tell the moderator to be there. 5 total, 2 appointed by us, 3 appointed by David.
I think the paper had it the other way around.
Yes, they did. Wishful thinking that the selectmen would have more appointees than the moderator, so.
Really?
Yeah, we get 2.
3, so it's 3 for Dave and 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when we vote for the town administrator, we get all 5 votes.
Right.
Right. No, I understand. Okay.
I think the rest
Well,
of
we would have corrected it.
Could I?
Yes,
Just
please.
caution with respect, if you're going to have 2 interview events, I think, so that, just thinking of fairness, I would put time limits for each one, so that you don't run into, for example, if you're interviewing the one alone, you spend an hour with them, and you're not spending an hour with.
So that's a good point.
I would, you know what I'm
That's
saying? I
yeah,
would put
that's a
some,
very good
and I don't
point.
think you'd need an hour on each.
So let's have that's a good point. So 9 interviews at 20 minutes each, that's 3 hours, assuming absolutely no breaks, which is unrealistic. 20 minutes for an unpaid position that's going to only last 6 months seems reasonable to me, but what do you guys think?
I would think 15 minutes might be more realistic.
Brian, what do you think? You're always contrarian.
Don't be contrarian this time.
15, and maybe this is just me, sounds short. 20 minutes sounds long. So,
Like 17 and a
I
half.
think you've been contrary to be
What did I say? What did I say? Got it, okay.
20 minutes.
So I would
So
say,
17 and a half minutes.
I would say that given the track record for brevity in this group, that 20 would be
Thank you.
hopefully
So
adequate.
it's 20. So it's 20. All right, so we'll tell the applicants to aim for 20 and obviously it's just a target, but that's a good point. We ought to have a target in mind. Could you do us a favor? At the next meeting, be prepared to just tell all of us how we're going to do the scoring. I know the scoring has been done. You guys have done it much more than the rest of us when you've interviewed for police candidates and stuff. I've only done it once when we interviewed fire chief, and I forget.
I would say this, I would want to think, because this is a little bit unique what we're looking for, and the standard questions we're asking for may or may not be applicable. They might be broad enough, but I'll put something together that, because you do want to have a standard set of evaluated criteria.
Well, then you have to put those together, and we'll have to.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I can do that.
Right.
I'll take what we do, but it might take a little modification just to be.
All right, and
fit it
we'll
more
obviously
closely.
have to review the evaluated criteria before the interview on the 28th.
But it's broad enough so that,
Yeah,
you're going to be able to, the important part of that is that you evaluate everyone by the same criteria if you're going to do that. But the wording is generally broad enough so you can fit it. The important thing is there is space for some comments, so a few words often helps in case somebody, wants, if you just plug in the numbers or the letters and without a comment or two, you're better off putting a couple of comments in.
so could we put something about evaluated criteria for town administrator screening committee on the next agenda? And-
Also on that agenda, to kick off the 6 months, I'll publicly submit my retirement.
I think that's right.
And the town clerk gets it, which makes it official.
Right. Okay.
on the 28th.
Okay, that's all I had on that.
I have a question.
Yes, Ms.
So
Grisham.
we are doing these interviews privately on the 1st.
No.
We are going to be, it'll be a similar forum to this, will be filmed.
So this is an interesting question. No, I was not, I'm assuming this is an open session. Yeah.
I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be, and I don't think you'd want it to be.
I'm fine with that, I just wanted to make sure that we were
Yeah.
going to interview everybody under the same conditions.
Yes, I think we will, and I'd have to check the open meeting law, but it's not even worth it if, we just have an open session. I don't think it needs to be broadcast.
No, I don't think it's like a job interview. So we would do the initial screening interview privately.
Well, the thing is, if we do one interview at our regularly scheduled meeting, that one interview will be televised.
Yeah, which
versus,
is,
and the other.
I would just do what we normally do, because you appoint people all the time to committees.
Right.
This is a little larger
the
number.
Lake Boone Commission.
You know, so there's no reason not to televise it, there's no reason it.
But I don't think Stowe TV has to plan on being there February 1st for these interviews.
Well, they can choose not to telecast.
Yeah,
it.
it's up to them, but I mean, I don't really see a need, so, but.
These are the individual 20-minute meetings,
Interviews, yeah. Obviously, we'll be making the selection at a regular meeting. And I have to check my timeline, but I think that's what we're doing at the next regular meeting.
You probably want some time to think before you fill in the event.
Yeah.
Well, one of the other things too, and it may play into some of my situation, where Deb is one of the candidates, is how is the selection going to be done? Because I am assuming that, let's say, if Dave picks his 3 before us, I may be able to.
Well, you certainly could. If what you're getting to is, can I then
Right,
participate?
I can then.
You can't participate when it comes to
Right.
your wife, that's all. I mean,
Well, I think you need to call the Ethics Commission about that.
Well, and that's my plan. As soon as I know what the full process is going to be, who's going to pick what, when.
So the
that I
process
can
is, the interviews are going to occur before David announces his picks, because he's going to be part of the
Right.
interviews. So you're going to have to be, unless you're going to ask no questions of anybody, and even then you're going to be sitting there evaluating. So we're going to do the interviews, score on our sheets, reconvene with David. I think, I have to check my timeline, but I think at the next regular meeting, compare the rankings, discuss, then I don't know whether David will announce first or us. I think I expressed a preference to him that he announced first, so we know who we don't have to focus on. But I would really appreciate if you would call the Ethics Commission ahead of time.
Yeah, well, like I said, it was my plan to talk to you tonight, to find out
Yeah.
how it was going to be done.
So I'm not sure I understand. If you simply recuse yourself when it comes to your wife, you can't vote for her, you're not going to be at the table when she interviews. I don't understand after that why. So your 5 are not going to include your wife, right? And you're not going to be at the table, you're going to recuse yourself when she's at the table being interviewed, is what I assumed. And then you're going to choose 5, and one of them won't be your wife. Then I'm not sure where the conflict.
Everybody else is her competitor.
Yeah.
So what would you be?
If this is a paying position, there'd be no question.
Absolutely.
And to the Ethics Commission, I don't think it matters whether it's paying.
I don't know.
If you're right, then there's no harm in calling the Ethics Commission.
Yeah, so run me this scenario. If he's recused himself, he's not part of the interview of his wife. He's going to not choose his wife, obviously, and he's going to choose 5 other people.
I want to make sure, I want to see if he can participate in the interviews of all the other candidates.
So you're thinking there'd be a conflict for him?
Yes.
We'll just ask.
We'll just ask.
No, okay, because I don't know what it would be.
Well, the ethics rules are often counterintuitive.
No, I believe me, I've been dealing with
Yeah.
30-something years. I'm
And
just trying
I
to figure
also-
out, even in a stretch of my imagination, what his conflict would be.
What I also
So
don't
we
know,
can't
there's
participate in the
no,
other.
and I think Brian's getting at this, there's no financial interest.
No, I understand that.
So I don't know that it's even what they call a Section 6 conflict, which is where you got a financial interest in family members and stuff like that. It might be what they call a Section 23 conflict, which is the appearance of a conflict. If that's what it is, then what he's got to do is go to the clerk's office and
File a disclosure.
and file a disclosure, which would solve everything. And that's what I want you to find out.
Let's just ask.
Yeah, you just ask. I've got a couple of disclosures on file.
Yeah, I've got one too.
So he'll check and we'll find out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, if I don't have to sit through interviews,
All right. I was gonna say all that to you privately, but.
Get out of here.
Okay, I get it. Town administrator's report. Brian wants to get out of here, so make it quick.
Well,
My liaison report will be 20 minutes.
probably already know this, but DEP is going to be dropping 2 monitoring wells at the fire station, because it is a fire station, to check both soil and water for PFAS. They're scheduled for the 17th. I just looked at, approved the TA ads. Ongoing case with the Board of Health, I just want to give you a heads up on. And then I also did want to mention to you that with respect to the budget, our Minuteman assessment, preliminary assessment, it may come down, but there hasn't been much movement in the past with Minuteman. They're pretty solid when they get there. Our assessment's going up 50%. 2 reasons. One is increased students, no surprise, school and all the rest. Then the second would be, obviously, we're fully loaded on the new school. But so it's going from 881 to 1.3 million, which is 407,000. It's not an insignificant figure anymore, but I just wanted to give you that heads up.
What's the increase in the operating budget? Is it going up 4%, 6%?
I have to give them details. I'm just
Okay.
starting with the assessment.
Sorry.
I just wanted to give you a preliminary heads
I
up.
just want to know how much is because we're sending more kids, or how much is...
I haven't broken down, but it's 2 drivers. It's more kids,
Yeah,
and
okay.
it's the fully loading of the deck. Those are the 2.
Sorry to
I
ask.
can get more precise on that, but, and it comes out to 37 grand this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Is that it, Bill?
That's it.
I guess that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to go to the liaison reports?
Have a safe trip.
Have a good night.
Happy New Year, Bill.
Yeah.
Why don't we start with Brian?
Met with LACAC last night. They are putting together the negotiating team. As you'll recall, we folded in the Stowe Cable negotiating team into the LACAC. That's going forward. Right now, we don't know, but that won't take place for another year or so before we'll be required to have a public hearing and yada, yada, yada. Right now, we haven't even begun the negotiations. However, the committee has decided to hire an attorney who's experienced in these matters, Bill August, and he will, as he did the last time, will provide guidance, and especially he'll be able to reverb off of the negotiations in other committees, in other communities that he works. Not that he would disclose any confidential information, but the public record of what the cable companies have negotiated with other towns is something he can share. Is that about?
Yep.
And Jonathan is trying to put together admirably a capital budget projection for the next 5 years. And it's very hard to do because, let's face it, we don't know what the new FCC regs are going to do to our towns. And secondly, it's technology. It's hard to look more than 1 year, let alone 5. Perhaps I gave too much detail there. I apologize to my colleagues. If the chair will give me a pass, I think there might be one other committee, but
we can come back to you. I only have one thing. Complete Streets held a public forum on the 2 projects that it has planned for this year: the Harvard Road pedestrian crosswalk across 117 and redo of the Old Bolton Road 117 intersection with the bike slip lane. Pretty well attended. 40 people maybe at Pumpo. A lot of comments. You know, some unhappiness with eliminating the island in Old Bolton Road, etc. And Complete Streets will take it back and think about it. And at the an interesting point, and I want to talk to Bill about this, as everybody know. Once again, the idea of do we have 3-season sidewalks or 4-season sidewalks came up, and people asking about plowing sidewalks. And I have heard this question now, I don't know how many times. And so I talked to Steve Nadeau and I talked to Bill, and Bill has asked Steve to start working on the numbers. Not for this town meeting, you know, but just to see what it is. And also, and Bill always raises this every time the subject comes up, the scope of it. Is it going to be just some of the sidewalks? Is it going to be all of them? And all of them will probably be pretty prohibitively expensive. And Steve has pointed out, first we'd have to reconstruct a bunch of them because you couldn't get a plow over some of them. And also there is a possibility of a bylaw, as I've mentioned sometimes, that just says the homeowner or the business owner has to clear. A lot of municipalities have that. But I think it's time that we start thinking about a more comprehensive response to this. I'm not saying I'm in favor of anything other than what we have right now. In fact, from what I know, I'm against it. There's little sidewalk snowplows for over $100,000 each. But I kind of think we owe it to people to figure out what the actual costs are, put some proposal before them, and let them vote up or down on it. That isn't going to be at this town meeting.
I'm not sure. Yeah, okay, I'm not sure I agree, and I don't see anybody doing anything until we have a new town administrator on this particular subject.
Well, that's probably, I don't think anything's going to happen until we have a new town administrator, but Steve can at least start thinking about it. I want to at least be able to say to people that we're thinking about considering it, that there will come a day when they're going to be able to vote on it. I'm starting to hear this question too often. And
have fewer coffees.
No, I hear it at forums like this. I heard it at candidates night last year. I hear it a lot. You obviously tend to hear it a little bit more in the winter. But again, I don't believe that town meetings should only vote on things I agree with. Even sometimes I'll be in favor of putting up things on the warrant that I expressly don't agree with, but a majority of people might. We sort of did that tonight.
And the thing is, that's one of the mechanisms, you know, many people may not know about it, but if you want to see something on the warrant, you can get 100 signatures for something like that.
So we have the possibility of a citizen's petition on exactly this subject. I don't think it's quite detailed enough to, you know, it doesn't appropriate any money, or it probably won't, but I think it's good. I think we should start thinking about this subject as well.
Okay, fine.
Well, I'm like I said, I'm not in favor of it, but you know, people can vote on it. We can think about it. Tom?
Nothing from me.
Courtney?
Community Preservation Committee continues to work through the several applications they've got this year. So by my tally, they have applications sufficient to expend much of the funds in the whole bank account.
The pot.
The pot.
Well, the trough is all it would be.
Oh, God.
So never mind town halls and other things, we'll be figuring that out.
Oh, I should.
So they're still working through the applications and, haven't gotten to the process where they've even voted on what they believe is good to go to the, I mean, typically, they send all of the projects to town meeting.
And I'll just add.
With very few exceptions.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I'll just add capital planning started meeting, but that's going on yet. You reminded me.
I remember, I attended Finance Committee, they started with the Fire Department budget and the Building Commissioner budget. One thing I think we should mention to the chair, maybe we can follow up on, but Chief Landry was able to save the townspeople a significant amount of money on their insurance by getting our classification from 9, which is because we're called firefighters, down to 6 because of pumping and some other stuff. I think that deserves some exploration and lauding.
Could you do me a favor? And just get him to send me an email with an explanation of that, and we'll try to get it on an agenda.
I suggested he do a press release at the Finance Committee meeting, and he said, I think he felt uncomfortable doing it because he said, that's what I'm paid to do. But if you'd like, or I think Tom might be better one to approach.
Actually, that's better.
But he does, I'd like to commend that because it's
I get it.
all the work he's done. The other thing is our building commissioner is going to be retiring next year. I don't know if anyone knew that, but he announced it. And finally, the Tri-Town met last week. I'm not a liaison to Tri-Town, and I never would have believed it actually would have gone through with the meeting, so I didn't attend.
Would you like to be the liaison?
No.
Okay. Does anybody want to be liaison in Tri-Town? Okay. Well, what?
Come on, get it out. How about if we split off? How about if we share?
How about, do you want to do that?
No, but I will.
Okay. Courtney and Brian are sharing Tri-Town?
Yeah, because the next meeting will be in 3 years.
Right. It shouldn't be too much heavy lifting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
You've got it.
All right.
Second then.
We stand adjourned. Thank you.